I'm Lauren Mitchell, 34 years old, and I'll never forget the moment the laughter on my family's faces froze mid-sneer. I stood drenched in a champagne-stained silk gown, heels sinking into the manicured lawn of the Napa Valley vineyard where my sister's wedding was held. My own uncle had just shoved me, yes, physically shoved me, into the decorative koi pond. And no one blinked. They laughed. They pointed. But I smiled. Not from joy, no. It was because I knew what was coming next. They didn't know who I really was, or who I had quietly married 3 months earlier in Florence. Before I tell you what happened after that moment, tell me, have you ever been mocked by the people who should love you most? If so, hit like and subscribe. Because this is for every black sheep who made it. I grew up in Sonoma, California, part of the deeply respected Mitchell family, owners of Mitchell Crest Winery. On the surface, we were admired, envied even. But inside that sprawling estate, behind the rows of Pinot Noir grapes, was a different truth. From as early as I can remember, I was the difficult child. My younger sister, Olivia, was the darling, soft-spoken, poised, everything my parents paraded like a trophy. "Why can't you be more like Olivia?" they'd ask, like I was a factory second. My father, Raymond, was the vineyard's operations head, strict, practical, and obsessed with appearances. My mother, Jeanette, ran the business side and had a knack for pretending I didn't exist when Olivia entered a room. Even my quiet wins were downplayed. When I won the regional science fair at 13, they mentioned it once, right before gushing about Olivia's piano solo at the Rotary Club. When I made varsity swim as a freshman, my uncle shrugged and asked, "But what's your backup plan?" My 18th birthday? Barely a dinner. Olivia's? A full banquet. I learned early that invisibility was safer than competing for attention I'd never win. I went on to study criminal justice at UC Davis, graduated with honors, and later moved to Seattle to escape it all. No one came to my graduation, but when Olivia performed at Carnegie Hall, they chartered a plane. When I returned for the wedding, they saw me as the same quiet Lauren. What they didn't know was that the man flying in later that day, my husband, had more power and wealth than anyone on that vineyard. And he was done letting them treat me like I didn't matter. "At least you're being realistic about your prospects," my mother said with a tight smile. Meanwhile, Olivia's theater arts degree was celebrated as fearless pursuit of passion. These 1,000 tiny paper cuts followed me into adulthood. Every holiday back at the vineyard became an emotional minefield, every win of mine diminished, every imperfection dissected. It was during my second year at the FBI Academy in Quantico that I finally decided to create distance. I stopped sharing personal updates. I skipped holidays when I could. I built walls taller than the winery gates back in Sonoma. Ironically, while I faded from their view, my career flourished. I found my calling in counterintelligence, swiftly rising through the ranks with grit, strategy, and a laser focus few could match. By 30, I was leading operations so sensitive they were buried in code words. My family had no idea, and that's exactly how I liked it. During a tech briefing at a cybersecurity summit in San Francisco, I met Gavin Rhodes. Gavin wasn't just another innovator. He was the founder and CEO of RhodesNet, a cybersecurity empire valued in the billions. His systems protected banks, defense networks, and critical infrastructure. Our first conversation about quantum encryption and misdirection algorithms should have been forgettable. Instead, it crackled. He saw me, not as someone's daughter, not as someone's sister, but as me. "You're remarkable, Lauren. Do you know that?" he said one night as we watched the lights of Sausalito flicker across the bay. We married 18 months later in a quiet ceremony in Santa Barbara. Only 2 people attended, my friend and colleague Talia from the Bureau and Gavin's younger brother Mark. The secrecy wasn't just for national security. It was protection. Protection from the dysfunction I had left behind. For 3 years, Gavin and I built a partnership grounded in purpose, laughter, and mutual respect. While his company expanded into Europe and Asia, I was named Deputy Director of Counterintelligence, the youngest in FBI history. Then the invitation arrived. Printed in ivory and trimmed in gold foil, it dripped with pretense. Olivia Mitchell was marrying Harrison Lamont, a name straight from a country club roster. The wedding would be held at a private estate in Calistoga, an extravagant spectacle of old money tradition and Mitchell family grandeur. Gavin was due in Seoul that weekend, finalizing a deal with South Korea's National Defense Ministry. "I can shift things," he said, noting my pause. I shook my head. "Number, I've got this one," I told him. But neither of us could have predicted what they would do that day. "This deal can wait," Gavin had said. "RoadsNet will survive without me for one afternoon. I'll try to make it back for the reception." He meant it, even if just for the last hour. So, I found myself alone, steering my black Audi Q7 through the winding roads of Calistoga, my stomach tightening with each mile. I hadn't seen most of my family in nearly 2 years. The vineyard estate was a spectacle. Of course it was. White-gloved valets ushered luxury vehicles up the cobblestone drive, and the scent of fresh-cut roses clung to the summer air. I parked, glanced at myself in the mirror, emerald green sheath dress, understated diamond studs, Gavin's first gift to me, hair pulled into a sleek, low twist. I looked powerful, untouchable. If only I felt that way inside. The estate's courtyard had been transformed into a floral dream for Olivia's big day. Orchids and hydrangeas dripped from archways. Champagne flowed. Every detail screamed Mitchell perfection. I handed my invitation to the attendant. He checked the list, expression neutral. "Miss Mitchell, you're at table 14? "Not the family table, naturally." I nodded. I expected nothing more. My sister's best friend Rachel saw me first. Her brows lifted just slightly before her face settled into a rehearsed smile. "Lauren, what a surprise. We weren't sure you'd make it." Her gaze flicked to the empty space beside me. "And you came alone?" "I did," I said evenly. No explanation offered. "How brave," she replied, voice dripping with false concern. "After that scandal with the co-worker, what was his name? Mom said it was heartbreaking when he dumped you for his intern." A complete lie, but fabricating humiliating backstories was a Mitchell family pastime. "You must be thinking of someone else," I said coolly. One by one, relatives drifted over. Aunt Cheryl remarked on my sensible haircut, as if femininity was something I'd resigned from. Uncle Brent loudly asked if I was still working for the feds and whether I'd considered doing something that paid enough to land a husband. Then came Tiffany, maid of honor, social assassin. "Lauren, wow, love the dress," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "Is that from, what's it called, value wear? You've always had a talent for bargains." She didn't wait for an answer. "Olivia was just saying she wasn't sure you'd show," Tiffany continued. "Not after skipping the bridal shower. And the Tahoe weekend." I smiled tightly, because they had no idea what was about to happen. "And the rehearsal dinner," Tiffany added, lips pursed in mock concern. Each event had clashed with classified operations I couldn't disclose. I'd sent thoughtful gifts to each, crystal stemware, personalized keepsakes, with handwritten notes. "Work commitments," I said simply. "Right. Your mysterious government job." She made air quotes, clearly amused. "Harrison's cousin works at the State Department. He says admin work can be exhausting." I just smiled. Let them think I pushed papers. The truth would have left them speechless. But today wasn't the time for revelations. Then my mother arrived in a seafoam chiffon gown that probably cost more than my FBI salary. "You made it," she said, as if I'd crossed continents instead of driven up from Berkeley. "Olivia was worried you'd skip. Again." "I wouldn't miss my sister's wedding," I replied. Her eyes scanned me top to bottom, looking for a weakness. Finding none, she sniffed. "That shade of green isn't very forgiving on pale skin. You should have run it by me." Before I could respond, a hush swept the room as the bridal party entered. There was Olivia, now officially Mrs. Lamont, on Harrison's arm, her custom gown gliding behind her like a silk cloud, trailed by 2 attendants. My father looked like he might cry, the way he gazed at her, as though she'd hung the stars herself. He'd never looked at me that way. I was led to table 14, practically in the outer ring of the reception. I sat among distant cousins, my mom's old college roommate, and a couple of elderly relatives who barely remembered my name. "Are you one of the Lamont girls?" one of them asked, leaning close with a squint. "No," I said gently. "I'm Raymond and Jeanette Mitchell's daughter, Olivia's sister." "Oh!" Her surprise stung more than I cared to admit. "I didn't know there was another daughter." Dinner was exquisite. 5 courses, endless champagne, but I could barely taste a thing. From my table, I watched the real celebration unfold. Laughter echoed from the head table, where my family sparkled beneath chandeliers and soaked in praise. No one even glanced in my direction. The family portraits? Taken earlier. I'd arrived exactly at the time listed, only to be told they'd had to move things up. Then came the speeches. Tiffany gushed about growing up with Olivia, like the sister I never had, completely erasing me. The best man quipped about Harrison trading up by marrying the Mitchell golden child. I smiled, because they had no idea who was about to walk through those doors. I held my composure through it all, sipping water instead of wine to stay sharp. I needed my focus. Gavin had texted an hour ago. Landing soon. Traffic through Napa, slow. ETA 45 minutes. Be there before dancing. I tried to join a small circle of cousins near the dance floor. One quick glance between them, and the group subtly closed ranks, shoulders turning inward. I hovered for a moment, then stepped back, choosing the solitude of a corner table instead. Just a little longer. Gavin would be here soon. That's when my mother appeared. Champagne flute in hand, lips pursed tight. "You could at least try to look like you're enjoying yourself," she hissed. "I'm not sulking," I said calmly. "I'm observing." "Well, observe with a smile?" Her eyes darted toward the Wellingtons. "The Lamonts are important people. Your sister's done well. Don't ruin it. You could have brought someone, you know? Everyone is wondering, again, why you're alone." I didn't bother explaining that my husband was worth more than the entire Lamont banking dynasty combined. That truth would reveal itself soon enough. The reception swelled into full celebration. Laughter, champagne, clinking silverware. My father stepped forward and tapped his crystal glass beside a grand ice sculpture of twin swans. The room hushed. "Today," he began, with the courtroom cadence of a seasoned litigator, "is the proudest day of my life." He turned to the glowing newlyweds. "My beautiful Olivia has made a match beyond any father's dreams. Harrison, you're not just gaining a wife. You're entering a legacy of discipline, dignity, and excellence." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "To Olivia," he said, glass raised high, "who has never once disappointed us." From her first recital to graduating from Juilliard with top honors to launching her arts foundation, she has been nothing short of a shining star. My chest ached, not with surprise, but with the old, familiar sting of erasure. The comparison didn't have to be spoken. It was always there. Olivia, the pride. Me, the problem. As the toasts carried on, I stood quietly and made my way toward the French doors leading to the terrace. The sun had just begun to dip behind the hills, casting amber light over the vineyard beyond. I was almost outside, hoping for one breath of clean air before Gavin arrived, when my father's voice rang out sharply behind me. "Leaving so soon, Lauren?" I stopped, not because I cared what he thought, but because he was about to learn just how wrong he'd always been. I turned slowly. He stood 10 feet away, microphone still clutched in his hand. Every head in the room turned in our direction. My mother and Olivia flanked him, 2 perfect statues in designer gowns, wearing identical expressions of thinly veiled judgment. "Just needed some air," I said evenly, keeping my voice calm. "Running away, more like it," my father replied, and the microphone made sure the entire reception heard it. Classic Lauren. Disappears whenever family obligations become inconvenient. Heat rose up my neck. My fingers curled slightly. "That's not true, isn't it?" His voice sharpened, clipped, controlled, the same tone he'd used to tear down witnesses in court. "You've missed half the wedding events. You arrived alone. Not even the courtesy of bringing a date." The room had gone silent. I'm sorry if attending alone offended you, I said, each word measured. She couldn't even find a date, he sneered. 34 years old and not a prospect in sight. Meanwhile, your sister has secured one of California's most eligible bachelors. There was laughter, soft at first, then more emboldened. I saw it land on Olivia's face like applause. She didn't flinch. Dad, I said quietly, this isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time and place, he snapped, stepping closer. This is a celebration of excellence, of family success, something you know nothing about. Each word landed with surgical cruelty. I searched my mother's face, hoping for a flicker of discomfort. Nothing. Just her polished, frozen smile. Olivia's eyes gleamed with smug satisfaction. You think we don't know why you're really alone? He continued. Why you hide behind that vague federal job. You've always been jealous of your sister. Always the disappointment. Always the failure. He was inches away now. The microphone lowered, but his voice still sliced through the room. I saw it then. How bitterness had sculpted his face. How resentment had eroded whatever fatherly warmth had once existed. Dad, please, stop, I whispered. Stop what? He barked. Telling the truth? That you've never measured up? That you've always been an embarrassment to the Mitchell name? His voice rose again, louder, harsher, crueler, and something inside me snapped. But it wasn't rage. It was clarity. You have no idea who I am, I said softly. He sneered. I know exactly who you are. And then it happened. His hands gripped my shoulders. With a violent shove, he pushed me backward. I stumbled, gasped, and fell hard into the courtyard fountain behind me. I stumbled backward, arms flailing, heels slipping on the marble edge. For one suspended heartbeat, I felt weightless. Then a cold, crushing splash as I plunged into the courtyard fountain. Water engulfed me. My carefully pinned hair unraveled, my emerald silk dress ballooned, then clung to my body, and makeup streamed down my face in black rivers. But none of it compared to the deeper sting, the realization that my father had just humiliated me in front of over 200 guests. There was a stunned pause. Then the reaction spread like fire. Gasps, murmurs, a ripple of uncomfortable laughter, then a burst of applause. Someone whistled. Another voice called out, "Guess the Mitchells are adding a wet t-shirt contest to the program." That earned real laughs. I pushed myself upright, water cascading from my ruined gown. My heels skidded on the slick bottom of the fountain as I stood. Through dripping strands of hair, I locked eyes with my father, his expression smug. My mother's hand covered her mouth, her eyes gleaming. Olivia smirked outright. The photographer didn't miss a beat. Click, click, click. Every frame capturing my humiliation. This would become legend, shared in whispers at family reunions, a new low in the long-running tale of Lauren the Letdown. But as the cold water soaked through my bones, another realization struck just as hard. I was done. Done chasing their approval, done being the punchline. Done hiding who I was to protect their pride. I stood tall, drenched but grounded. The water poured from me, but my voice rose clear. "Remember this moment," I said, my words slicing through the murmurs. No yelling, no tears, just unwavering truth. My father's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowed with a flicker of unease. "Remember how you treated me, how you mocked me, because I will." I moved slowly to the edge, lifting my soaked dress with grace. The crowd had fallen silent, all laughter choked off. Even my father stood still. I stepped out with as much dignity as a soaked dress and heels allowed, droplets trailing behind me. A memory flashed. My high school graduation, my valedictorian speech interrupted by my father's voice. Memorization has always been Lauren's only skill. The auditorium had laughed, and I had wilted. But not this time. This time, I stood taller. Because this time, the story wasn't going to end with their laughter. It was going to end with my truth. I walked through the stunned crowd, water dripping with every step, leaving a trail across the polished stone floor of the estate's grand hall. No one stopped me. No one offered a towel or a word. And strangely, I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need anything from these people. The nearest restroom, tucked beside the wine cellar hallway, was thankfully empty when I stepped inside. I caught a glimpse of myself in the ornate brass-framed mirror above the marble sinks. Mascara streaked my cheeks. My hair, once in a perfect twist, now clung to my scalp. The emerald dress, now a dark, soaked forest green, clung to every inch of me. And yet, I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt free. My phone had been in my clutch, which I'd left behind at table 14 before the shove. I returned to retrieve it, where a kindly distant relative handed it back with wide eyes. I thanked her and returned to the restroom to text Gavin. "How close are you?" His reply came instantly. 20 minutes out, traffic clearing. "Everything okay?" I paused, then typed, "My dad pushed me into the fountain, in front of everyone." 3 dots. Pause. Then, "I'm coming. 10 minutes. Security's already in position." I blinked. Security team? Of course. That was Gavin, always 10 steps ahead, always protecting what mattered. And somehow, incredibly, I mattered. The door creaked open. A young woman stepped in, early 20s, familiar face. One of Harrison's cousins, I thought. She froze when she saw me. "Oh, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, lifting my chin. "Just a little wet." She stepped in farther, hesitant but sincere. "Everyone's talking about what happened. That was really awful. What your dad did." Her quiet empathy nearly broke me. "Thank you," I said softly. "I have a spare dress in my car," she offered. "It might be a little big, but—" "That's incredibly kind," I replied, managing a smile. "But I have backup clothes in my trunk." "Occupational habit." "Of course," she nodded. "Want me to walk with you to valet? Might be better not going through them alone." "I'd like that." She reached out a hand. "I'm Emma, Harrison's step-cousin. The Wellingtons are her side. I never quite fit with their East Coast money crowd." I took her hand, water dripping onto her sleeve. "Lauren," I said, "Mitchell family scapegoat." We smiled. 2 outsiders, walking back into the fire. "Pleasure to meet you," I said. Emma laughed, and somehow that small, genuine moment steadied me. She ran quiet interference as we slipped through the side exit toward the valet stand. I popped the trunk of my Audi and pulled out the black sheath dress and pair of flats I always kept on hand, old habits from fieldwork. 10 minutes in a guest restroom near the Vineyard's tasting room, and I'd gone from soaked spectacle to composed professional. As I reapplied my makeup, I thought about my life. My real life. Not the warped version my family had spent years projecting. I had graduated top of my class at Quantico, led classified operations that disrupted espionage networks. I had earned the trust of some of the most formidable minds in Washington. And I had married a man who not only saw me, but believed in me. Gavin wasn't just brilliant. He was loyal, grounded, and kind. And none of that had come from the people currently sipping champagne under chandeliers inside. Maybe that was the point. Maybe real worth isn't something measured by people trapped in their own illusions. I glanced at my phone. In position, Gavin's message read. I inhaled deeply, smoothed the creases in my dress, and stepped back toward the reception hall with my head high. Emma had returned to her table, but flashed me a supportive thumbs up as I passed. I smiled back. For once, I didn't feel alone. Inside, the reception had picked up again. Laughter, music, clinking glasses. I moved quietly toward the ballroom entrance, positioning myself near the doors, just as planned. That's when I spotted my mother across the room, surrounded by a circle of pearl-clad women. "She's always been difficult," my mother said, gesturing dramatically with her flute of champagne. "We've tried everything. The best schools, therapists, tutors. But some people, they just refuse to thrive." A woman beside her sighed. "It's a shame, really? Especially with Olivia doing so well. Same upbringing, yet so different." "Genetics are mysterious," my mother murmured, a martyr's expression softening her face. "Raymond and I have accepted that Lauren will just never—" She cut off sharply, because I was standing 5 feet away. clearly not sulking in a bathroom, as she'd assumed. "Lauren," she said quickly, recovering, "you look dry." "Yes, Mother," I replied evenly. "I always keep a spare on hand." "One of many professional habits," I said, brushing past her. Her friends mumbled stiff greetings, then quickly scattered toward the bar with urgent drink-related missions. I turned back to my mother. "Was humiliating me part of the wedding itinerary?" I asked quietly. "Or did Dad improvise that part?" "Don't be dramatic," she snapped under her breath. "You were trying to disappear, as usual. Pushing your daughter into a fountain isn't exactly a normal response to antisocial behavior." "Perhaps if you had brought a date," she said, eyes narrowing, "or made any effort to participate in your sister's joy instead of hiding behind your secretive job and your perpetually busy schedule, none of this would have happened." I studied her face, searching for even a flicker of maternal instinct. All I saw was irritation, frustration that I had disrupted the curated narrative she'd built. "You know what's interesting, Mother?" I said calmly. "I've spent my entire life trying not to take up space, trying not to make anything about me, and somehow it was still too much." Before she could respond, a sharp commotion at the estate's main entrance drew everyone's attention. The sound of car doors slamming in coordinated rhythm. Guests turned, conversations dropped. Two sharply dressed men moved briskly toward the ballroom doors, their presence unmistakable, controlled, alert, assessing. My mother frowned. "What is this? If the Lamonts arranged extra security without consulting us?" I glanced at my watch. "Right on time," I murmured. A sleek black Maybach pulled into view just beyond the glass entrance, flanked by two matte gray SUVs. Heads turned. Whispers began to stir. Even the band seemed to lower its tempo. My pulse kicked up, steady, but alive. After 3 years of marriage, Gavin still had that effect on me. And in less than a minute, my family would finally meet my husband. The ballroom's double doors swung open with controlled force. Marcus and Dimitri entered first. Gavin's lead security men, unmistakable in tailored suits, their stances betraying elite training. They moved with practiced precision, scanning the room as though sweeping a classified perimeter. The murmurs grew louder. Raymond Mitchell stepped forward, puffed up and bristling. "Excuse me," he barked. "This is a private event. If you're looking for the corporate conference, that's in the West Wing." Marcus didn't even blink. He looked straight through my father, like he wasn't there. Dimitri touched his earpiece, then said coolly, "Perimeter secure. Proceeding." And then Gavin walked in. My husband had always carried presence like a second skin, but today, he commanded the entire entrance. 6'2", swimmer's shoulders, and a tailored charcoal Tom Ford suit that whispered power without trying. His dark hair was just tousled enough to hint he'd come straight from the helipad, and his jawline looked carved from marble. But it was his eyes, piercing gray, focused, always searching, that undid me every time. They swept the room in a calculated scan before landing on me. The moment they did, his face shifted. Serious control melting into the private smile meant only for me. That smile grounded me more than any lecture, title, or mission ever had. He moved through the crowd like the room belonged to him. Guests instinctively parted, conversations halting as people realized this man wasn't just someone. He was someone important. Beside me, I felt my mother stiffen. Her breath caught. She suddenly understood. He was here for me. Behind Gavin, 4 more members of his security team entered, each one taking position around the ballroom, barely drawing attention, yet unmistakably in control. "Lauren," he said when he reached me, his voice warm and low, grounding me. He took my hands in his, thumbs brushing over my knuckles. Our silent signal, the one we used even in briefings. "Sorry I'm late." "You're right on time," I replied, steadier than I'd felt all day. He leaned in and kissed me, not for show, but with quiet certainty. Then his hand settled protectively at my lower back as he turned to face my mother. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said cordially, his politeness cool and exact. "I'm Gavin Rhodes, Lauren's husband." My mother's eyes widened. Her face went from confusion to disbelief to something far more uncomfortable. Recalculation. Ah, husband, she repeated, her voice rising half an octave. But Lauren never mentioned. 3 years next month, Gavin said smoothly. We keep our personal life private for security reasons. By now, my father had shoved through the circle of stunned guests, red-faced, jaw tight. What is this? He barked. Some kind of stunt? Hiring bodyguards and some actor to put on a show? This is your sister's wedding, Lauren, not a stage for your drama. Gavin's expression didn't change much, but I saw it. The flicker. That edge. Mr. Mitchell, he said, voice steady. I'm Gavin Rhodes, Chief Executive Officer of RhodeSnet Security. Your daughter and I have been married for nearly 3 years. My father blinked, his mouth opened, then closed. Even he had heard of RhodeSnet. And in that moment, everything changed. If you've ever wished for a moment where the tables finally turned, hit subscribe. Because what happened next left the entire room speechless. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. That's not possible, my father finally choked out. We would have known. Would you? Gavin asked, tone mild, but his eyes locked onto my father's. When have you ever taken interest in Lauren's actual life? From what I've seen today and what she's told me over the years, your attention seems reserved for judgment, not understanding. A hush settled deeper over the room as a ripple in the crowd revealed Olivia, gliding forward in her elaborate white gown like a specter conjured by confusion. Harrison trailed behind her, eyebrows raised in stunned curiosity. What's happening? Olivia demanded. Who are these people? Apparently, my mother said faintly, your sister has a husband. That's ridiculous, Olivia snapped. She's making it up. For attention. On my wedding day. Gavin's arm tightened around my waist, not possessively, but protectively. Grounding. Mrs. Lamont, he said, voice gracious. Congratulations on your marriage. I regret missing the ceremony. International business in Tokyo delayed my return. His polished manners made Olivia's petulance appear childish in comparison. She faltered, glancing from Gavin to the team behind him, and then to the crowd, now buzzing with curiosity. Is this some kind of prank? My father barked. You expect us to believe that Lauren, our Lauren, secretly got married? Billionaire, actually, someone called from the back. It was one of Harrison's groomsmen, phone in hand. Gavin Rhodes, RhodeSnet Security. He was on the Forbes cover last month. Estimated net worth, $12 billion, he added. A collective gasp rippled across the ballroom. My mother reached out blindly for the back of a chair, her knees visibly weakening. I don't understand, she whispered. Why wouldn't you tell us? And for the first time, her voice wasn't sharp. It was almost human. I met her eyes. When have you ever asked about my life, Mother? Ever celebrated anything about me? She had no answer. As for me, Gavin added, gaze still steady, I've been eager to meet the family Lauren has described so vividly, though after what I've witnessed today, he paused, letting the silence speak. I'm disappointed. My father's face darkened. Now, listen here, young man. No, Mr. Mitchell, Gavin cut in, voice steely. You listen. I saw you push your daughter into a fountain. I heard what you said to her. Under normal circumstances, he continued, his tone cold and deliberate, that would result in immediate legal consequences. My team was ready to step in, but Lauren signaled them to stand down. That's the kind of person your daughter is, Gavin said calmly. Even after your disgraceful behavior, she chose not to escalate the scene at her sister's wedding. The room was silent, not a whisper, not a breath. Even the waitstaff froze in place. Fortunately for you, Gavin continued, my wife is a better person than I am. Because if anyone ever treated her that way again, my response wouldn't be nearly so measured. The threat, delivered in the most civilized tone imaginable, hung in the air like a blade suspended mid-swing. And then, as if perfectly timed, the ballroom doors opened once more. 2 figures entered, confident, polished, and unmistakably federal. My spine straightened before I even registered their faces. Marcus and Sophia. my most trusted agents from D.C. They moved with precision, stopping just short of where Gavin and I stood. Deputy Director Mitchell, Sophia said clearly, using my full title. Apologies for the interruption. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. The title echoed for a beat, then came the whispers. Deputy Director? Did she say FBI? Wait, she's with the Bureau? My father blinked, baffled. Deputy Director of what? Some government outreach program? Gavin turned toward him, smiling just enough to sharpen the edge of his words. Your daughter is the youngest Deputy Director of Counterintelligence in FBI history. She's led operations that have prevented attacks, dismantled espionage rings, and saved lives. The kind of work that earns top-level security clearance and the respect of Washington's most guarded circles. A collective gasp rippled through the room. My mother clutched the back of a chair, pale and blinking. Olivia stepped forward, her bridal glow clouded by disbelief. That's impossible. Lauren is just... She trailed off. Just what, Olivia? I asked gently. Just your disappointing sister? Just the invisible one you never had to compete with? She said nothing. The Lauren Mitchell I know, Gavin said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence, is brilliant, fearless, and relentless in her duty. She's earned the trust of agents, analysts, and generals alike. He turned to my father. And for reasons I still don't understand, she valued your approval enough to show up today, even knowing how you treat her. My father looked a decade older than he had moments ago, his usual bluster gone. Why didn't you tell us? He asked, voice hoarse. Would you have believed me? I replied softly. Or would you have twisted it, like everything else? His silence said it all. Marcus stepped forward, holding out a secure tablet. Deputy Director, I hate to press, but we need your authorization on the operation. I accepted the tablet, eyes scanning the encrypted file. One quick decision. Proceed with option 2, but increase surveillance on the secondary target. I'll join the full briefing in 20 minutes. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied, taking the tablet back with practiced ease. The exchange lasted seconds, but its effect on the room was seismic. This wasn't theater. This wasn't an act. It was real authority, real responsibility. And I wore it like a second skin. Gavin glanced at his watch. We should go. The helicopter's waiting, and Tokyo's ready for the video conference at 9. I nodded, then turned one last time to face the crowd that had once seen me as nothing but a footnote. Congratulations on your wedding, Olivia, I said sincerely. I wish you and Harrison every happiness. Olivia stared at me, lips parted, but no words came. To his credit, Harrison stepped forward, hand extended. It was an honor to meet you, Mr. Rhodes. And you, Director Mitchell? I hope we'll speak again sometime. His sincerity surprised me. I'd like that, Harrison, I said, shaking his hand warmly. Behind him, my parents remained motionless. The foundation of their story cracked and crumbled before hundreds of witnesses. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, Gavin said with composed grace, thank you for the invitation. I regret missing the ceremony. My father finally stirred. Lauren, wait, he said, voice tight. We need to talk about this. We're your parents. We've always wanted what's best for you. We've always been proud. The desperation to rewrite history might have worked once, but not anymore. No, Dad, I replied gently. You haven't, and that's okay. I don't need you to be proud of me anymore. Gavin placed a hand at the small of my back as we turned to leave. My security team shifted around us, practiced and quiet, falling into step. Behind us, the murmurs had exploded into full-on conversation. Shock, awe, questions. The Mitchell legacy would never recover. And I, finally, was free. The sleek black helicopter waited on the rooftop helipad above the vineyard estate, blades already humming. As we approached, wind whipping through the vines and fabric of my dress, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had left more than a ballroom behind. I had left behind the last remnants of their approval, and I hadn't looked back. Are you okay? Gavin asked, his voice low near my ear, barely cutting through the rising hum of the helicopter rotors. Surprisingly, yes, I replied. Better than okay. Before we could board, Sophia stepped forward. Concern etched across her face. Deputy Director, we have a situation. The ambassador is requesting your presence at the consulate immediately. She lowered her voice. Surveillance flagged anomalous signals. Marcus is coordinating with field ops now. I exchanged a glance with Gavin. This wasn't part of our evening script. Real or theater? I asked softly. Unfortunately, very real, Sophia replied. Time sensitive. I nodded, sliding effortlessly into operational mode. Reroute the chopper to the consulate. Notify the duty analyst team. I want a full sit rep waiting when I arrive. Already in motion, she confirmed. Gavin touched my arm. Go. I'll meet you there. This was our rhythm. Two intense careers, sometimes colliding, always supporting. As we turned to head back toward the rooftop access stairs, planning to exit via the estate's private helipad elevator, someone blocked our path. My mother. Breathless, flushed, her immaculate makeup no longer hiding her pallor. She must have rushed up the stairs. Lauren, she said, her voice more uncertain than I'd ever heard. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk. I glanced at Sophia, who gave a respectful nod and stepped back. I have a national security emergency, Mother. Reconciliation will have to wait. National security, she repeated, as if just realizing those words applied to me. You really are? What they said? With the FBI, Deputy Director of Counterintelligence Operations, I confirmed. For 18 months. Before that, Assistant Director for 3 years. She looked disoriented, trying to reconcile this truth with the version of me she'd carried for decades. But why keep it a secret? Why didn't you tell us? So you could be proud? I asked gently. Would you have been? Or would you have compared it to Olivia's latest spotlight moment? Said I got the job through luck or pity? Her silence told me everything. The flinch, the hesitation. I'd hit the mark. And the marriage, she added quietly. 3 years, he said. I nodded. 3 years next month. She looked away, her composure unraveling. We didn't know. No, I said calmly. You never wanted to. I stepped around her, leaving behind not just a stunned parent, but decades of being unseen. Sophia fell into step beside me. The world was waiting, and this time, I was ready. 3 years, my mother repeated. And you never thought to mention you'd married one of the wealthiest men in the country. Her emphasis on Gavin's wealth, not his character, wasn't lost on me. Even now, status remained her primary lens. Our marriage is private for several reasons, I said calmly. Gavin's position makes him a potential target. My role involves classified work. And honestly, I wanted something that wasn't exposed to Mitchell family judgment. The pilot motioned from the helicopter steps. We were out of time. I have to go, I said. There's an active national security situation developing. She stepped forward slightly. Will you come back? Her voice was quieter, uncertain. To talk? To maybe let us get to know you? The question stunned me. For once, it didn't feel manipulative. It felt lost. I looked at her closely. Gone was the perfectly controlled socialite. In her place stood a woman grappling with decades of distance. I don't know, I answered truthfully. That depends on whether you want to know me or just the version that now fits your definition of success. She didn't reply. Think about it, I said gently. Think about whether you want a relationship with me, not the daughter you tried to sculpt. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Your father would never admit it, she said. But what he did tonight, it was wrong, unforgivable. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever heard from her. Thank you, I replied. That matters. Gavin and I boarded the helicopter. As we lifted off, I glanced down. My mother still stood on the rooftop, smaller now, uncertain. Not the towering figure of my childhood, but a woman watching her constructed world start to crack. I felt something unexpected, compassion. The embassy situation was real but manageable, an encrypted transmission breach flagged by our overseas allies. My team neutralized the threat within 2 hours. By 11 p.m., Gavin and I were finally home, back in our San Francisco penthouse overlooking the bay. "Some wedding," he said, loosening his tie as we stepped onto the terrace. Below us, the city lights shimmered over the water, casting long reflections that danced across the windows. "Not quite how I planned to introduce you to my family," I murmured, kicking off my heels. He grinned. "Honestly, I thought it went pretty well." He smiled slightly. "The look on your father's face when Marcus called you director, worth the price of admission?" I couldn't help laughing. "Yeah, that was pretty satisfying." "And your mother followed you to the roof," he added. "That seems significant." "I'm not sure what it means yet," I admitted. 34 years of patterns don't vanish in a single evening. "No," Gavin agreed, gently pulling me into his arms. "But revelations can open doors." He kissed my temple. "Whatever you decide, whether you want to rebuild something with them or keep that distance, I'm with you." This was what love looked like. Not approval earned through obedience, but support grounded in respect and trust. "Did you catch Harrison's face when he realized who you were?" I asked, changing the subject. "He looked like he was recalculating how to get you to invest in his startup fund." Gavin chuckled. "He seemed like the only one who understood the gravity of your role, properly respectful." "I noticed that too," I said. "Maybe Olivia made a better choice than I gave her credit for." My phone buzzed. I expected bureau updates, but it was from Emma. "Oh my God, family meltdown. Your dad keeps saying there's a mistake. Your mom hasn't spoken in 40 minutes. Olivia locked herself in the bridal suite. Also, I Googled your husband and holy crap. Also, I'm sorry they treated you like garbage all these years. Drink sometime? Your new favorite cousin." I showed Gavin the message. He raised an amused brow. "New favorite cousin?" "She was kind to me," I explained. "Offered me a dress, helped me avoid the crowd. Before you even arrived." Sometimes allies show up where you least expect them. Over the next hour, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Texts from relatives who hadn't messaged me in years. Distant cousins suddenly remembered my birthday. A second cousin suggested lunch. My father sent a formal message. "We need to discuss recent developments at your earliest convenience." I silenced my phone and set it on the nightstand. "They're not reaching out to me," I said as Gavin turned down the covers. "They're reaching out to Deputy Director Mitchell, wife of Gavin Rhodes." "Does that surprise you?" he asked gently. "No," I said, slipping into bed beside him. "But it's a good reminder." "Of what?" "That the people who matter knew me before they needed me." "No," I admitted, "but it does clarify things." As I drifted toward sleep in the comfort of our San Francisco penthouse, I realized the events of that day hadn't given me a family. I'd had one all along. Gavin, my trusted team at the bureau, the handful of friends who saw me clearly and valued me for who I was. The family I chose, not the one I was born into. And that, I was learning, made all the difference. 3 weeks after Olivia's wedding, Gavin and I sat in our favorite corner of Bluefinch Cafe, tucked away on a quiet block near Pacific Heights. Despite everything, our careers, net worth, recognition, we both treasured these quiet, unremarkable moments. Good coffee, easy conversation, and the bliss of being two anonymous people in a city too busy to notice. "Your mother called again yesterday," Gavin said, gently stirring his Americano. "Third time this week." I nodded, watching people bustle past the window. Autumn in San Francisco wasn't as vibrant as New England, but Golden Gate Park had still taken on a crisp, amber charm. She left another voicemail, invited us to Sunday dinner. "Are you considering it?" he asked, his tone neutral. As always, offering space, not pressure. "I'm not sure," I replied. "Part of me thinks it's just damage control." Boston's elite had circulated the wedding story like wildfire. My father's law partners reportedly questioned his judgment. My mother had been quietly removed from the chairwoman position of her precious arts council. Apparently, publicly humiliating your FBI deputy director daughter and alienating your billionaire son-in-law wasn't great for optics. "And the other part?" Gavin asked, eyes steady. I sighed. tracing the rim of my mug. The other part wonders if, for the first time, they're trying to actually know me. Me, not their disappointment, not a polished resume. The past few weeks had unleashed a flood of family outreach. Emails, texts, even a few letters. My father oscillated between defensive justifications and clumsy apologies. My mother's messages were more direct, but still laced with undertones that I should have informed them sooner. Olivia sent one text from her honeymoon. "We need to talk when I'm back." Nothing more. The biggest surprise? My friendship with Emma, Harrison's step-cousin. True to her word, we'd met for drinks. She admitted always feeling like an outsider among the Wellingtons, a sentiment I understood deeply. Her curiosity about my work, what little I could share, was sincere. No angles, no performance. "I've been thinking about something Dr. Chin said in therapy last week," I told Gavin, shifting the conversation towards something that felt more mine. He leaned in. "Tell me." "I told Dr. Chin," I said, referring to the counselor I'd started seeing to work through years of tangled family dynamics, that setting boundaries isn't about punishing people. It's about protecting yourself. Gavin nodded thoughtfully. "That's a powerful distinction." "I think I can have some sort of relationship with my family," I continued, voicing the thoughts I'd been wrestling with for weeks. "But it has to be on new terms. No more minimizing, no more comparisons, no more accepting disrespect just to keep the peace." "That sounds healthy," Gavin said, "empowered." "And if they can't meet me there," I added, "then I keep moving forward with the people who can show up for me. You, my friends, my team, the family I've chosen." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down. "Marcus." I answered immediately. "Talk to me." "We've got movement on the Richardson case," he said without preamble. "Surveillance flagged a meeting at the target location. Field teams in position." "I'm 20 out," I replied, already grabbing my coat. Gavin stood too, already used to this rhythm. "Need a ride?" "I've got the bureau car today," I said, nodding toward the black SUV parked just out of sight. My security detail would already be alert and ready. He leaned in to kiss me. "Stay safe." We stepped out into the late afternoon chill, then parted ways. He headed toward his next investor briefing. I turned toward the quiet work of protecting national security. Each of us driven, but never in competition. That night, after a successful field operation and a sealed intelligence breach, I made a decision. I called my mother. "Sunday dinner," I said once she answered. "Gavin and I will come, but we need to set a few ground rules." Her immediate acceptance was telling. The old Jeanette Mitchell would have bristled. This version, humbled, quieter, was willing to listen. Dinner was predictably stiff. My father oscillated between awkward small talk and shallow praise about my impressive career. My mother over-explained every course like she was hosting foreign dignitaries. Olivia and Harrison arrived late. His smile was genuine. Hers was cautious. But even through the discomfort, there were flickers, small, tentative signs that something real could grow. A question about my work that didn't feel performative. A glance from Olivia that wasn't condescending. Just curious. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet, but for the first time, it felt possible. Not because they'd changed, but because I had. My father asked thoughtful questions about a recent cybersecurity initiative Gavin's company had implemented for federal agencies. He listened more than he spoke, which in itself was remarkable. My mother, ever the curator of appearances, surprised me by bringing out a box I hadn't seen in decades. Inside were my childhood debate trophies, academic ribbons, and faded photos from science fairs I had long forgotten. For a moment, I wondered if she had noticed more than she'd ever let on. But the biggest surprise came from Olivia. After dinner, she asked to speak with me privately. We stepped into the back garden of our family home in Sonoma, the same one where we had played as kids under the old elm tree. She fidgeted with her wedding ring and took a while to find her words. "I didn't know," she said finally. "About your job. About Gavin. About any of it." "You never asked," I said gently, not with malice, but with simple truth. She nodded. "I know. I think I liked being the favorite. It was easier. I didn't have to examine anything too closely. She took a breath. Harrison thinks I should. He said I reacted the way I did because I felt threatened. Even before I knew everything. I still felt it. He thinks family therapy could help. Us both. I studied her. Truly studied her. For the first time in years, I saw past the curated perfection. The designer dress, the flawless makeup, and into the woman beneath. The golden child wasn't without scars. I'd consider that, I said after a long pause. Not now, but someday. It wasn't an olive branch, not quite. But it was the hinge of a door long bolted shut. The months that followed brought halting, imperfect progress. Family dinners shifted from strained silences to tentative conversations. My father, initially resistant, began attending anger management therapy. To my surprise, he stayed with it. My mother and I experimented with weekly brunches. Sometimes we ended in silence, sometimes with genuine laughter. The difference was, we both kept showing up. There were setbacks, moments where old habits flared, where my mother's passive-aggressive barbs slipped out, or my father's voice grew too sharp. But this time, they apologized. And I didn't shrink, because the biggest shift wasn't in them, it was in me. I no longer bent myself in half for their approval. I didn't minimize my success or tolerate disrespect under the guise of keeping peace. My identity wasn't tethered to the Mitchell name anymore. 1 year after Olivia's wedding, Gavin and I hosted a gathering at our Brookline home. Not just family, but the family I'd chosen. Colleagues from the bureau, Gavin's sister, Harper, and her partner. Friends who had held me up when my foundation cracked. Emma came too, with her new boyfriend, and brought a lemon tart she'd made herself. Even a few extended relatives showed, the ones who had reached out since the wedding, not out of obligation, but sincere interest. As I moved through the crowd, I realized something profound. Family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by presence, by who listens, who honors your truth, who grows alongside you. Sometimes that's your parents or siblings. Sometimes it isn't. And when you stop trying to force love from places where it was never freely given, you make room for the kind that is. I stood in the kitchen with Gavin's arms wrapped around me from behind, the scent of cinnamon and wine in the air. Happy? He asked, his voice low. I leaned into him, watching as my father laughed with Marcus over fishing gear, my mother scrolling through photos with Emma, and Olivia teasing Harrison over burnt cookies. Not perfect, I said. But yes, I am. If you followed my story this far, thank you, truly. Sharing it wasn't easy, but I hope it resonated with anyone who's ever felt unseen in their own family or silenced in the places they were meant to feel safest. If you've ever been the other sibling, the one misunderstood or underestimated, I want to hear from you in the comments. What was your moment of clarity? How did you begin to reclaim your voice? Let's create a space where people like us, who learn to find strength outside the approval of others, can share, connect, and grow together. Please subscribe if this story moved you. If it reminded you that healing is messy but possible, and that chosen family is just as valid, if not more so, than the one you were born into. Your support means more than you know, not just to me, but to anyone needing that gentle push to believe they're not alone. And here's what I've learned, what I hope you take with you. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's clarity. Speaking your truth isn't rebellious. It's necessary. You are not selfish for walking away from people who harm you, even if they share your last name. You deserve peace. You deserve love without conditions. You deserve to be the author of your own story, not just a character in someone else's version of who you're supposed to be. So, whether you're at the beginning of your healing journey or miles down the road, remember this. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And no matter how it started, you get to decide how it ends. Let me know in the comments what part of my story spoke to you and what truth you're ready to speak into your own life.